Good morning, everyone. I'm Billy Wright, a member of the Board of Directors of the Municipal Arts Society. Thank you for attending today's event. I am so pleased to introduce our next speaker, Edwin Torres of the Rockefeller Foundation, or Eddie to many of you. The Rockefeller Foundation has been a tremendous supporter of programs at the Municipal Arts Society for many years. The foundation is a headline supporter for this year's summit, as well as the major funder for the second annual MAS survey on livability. The survey reports the perceptions, concerns, and experiences of new and lifelong New Yorkers from all 5 boroughs about the livability of their neighborhoods and our city as a whole. Over the next 2 days, we will be exploring many of the issues reflected in their responses. Now, before we hear the interesting results of this year's survey from Vin, Eddie Torres will give us some background on the project. As Associate Director for the New York City Opportunities Fund and for Innovation at the Rockefeller Foundation, Eddie oversees the Foundation's commitment to New York City, including supporting arts and culture, both of which are central to the city's identity. Among his many projects is the Jane Jacobs Medal, which MAS administers on behalf of the foundation. MAS is so grateful for the support of Eddie Torres and the entire Rockefeller Foundation. So without further ado, please welcome Eddie Torres.
And as ever, as humbled as I am by that introduction, I'm always grateful to be introduced by someone who's the same height as me. Good morning, I'm Eddie Torres. I'm Associate Director of the Rockefeller Foundation, where I oversee the Foundation's stewardship of New York City, which has been our home since our founding in 1913. The Rockefeller Foundation views New York City as a hub for our foundation-wide valuing of cities and our support for innovation to achieve community resilience. Toward this end, we support equitable access to employment opportunities in New York City. We're working with the New York Alliance for Careers in Healthcare, a collaboration between healthcare providers and job trainers to staff the projected doubling of community health centers in New York, ensuring that this opportunity creates economic opportunity for our city's most vulnerable residents. We're also working with the city to maximize the social utility of the upgrading of all our city's public schools, which includes their being greened. Through our support, Pratt Center for Community Development are connecting the city, their contracted energy service corporations, and New York City's manufacturing community to ensure that the greening of our public schools is sourced locally, creating local economic impact and new jobs, achieving both economic and environmental resilience. The Rockefeller Foundation also supports the resilience of our community's cultures through our naturally occurring cultural districts in such places as El Barrio, Chinatown, East 4th Street, the Bronx, the Latino community in Williamsburg, and the African diaspora throughout Brooklyn. These concerns make Municipal Arts Society a natural partner for the Rockefeller Foundation. Special credit must be given to Jean Tachi, Christine Krish, Mary Rowe, Ann Coates, Hazel Balaban, and Joel Colkin at the Municipal Arts Society, who've done so much work to make both this summit and the Jane Jacobs Medal happen every year, and we're so grateful to them. This is the second year of the Survey on Livability and the Summit on New York City, and we're unspeakably proud to support Municipal Arts Society's work. To present the survey's findings, I'd like to present a great steward of New York City and a man the Rockefeller Foundation is proud to call our partner and our friend, the President of the Municipal Arts Society, Mr. Vin Cipolla.
Thank you so much, Eddie, for your terrific partnership. Thank you so much. Okay, this is going to be a lot because doing survey results, this is dense. So I may pause to do this. I may jump around a little bit just to be sure you're awake. I'm going to put that there. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to try to get through some pieces of this a little faster than some other pieces. We've got several slides we want to show. I've got Ann Coates here, who's going to help with that. And so off we go. Again, just many thanks to the Rockefeller Foundation for its vision and its support in this important initiative, to Eddie in particular. This is the second year, as Eddie mentioned, of the Livability Survey, and the second year we are presenting the results at the summit. MAS is very grateful to the Marist Institute for Public Opinion for working with us again this year on the questionnaire and for conducting the survey. More than 1,000 adult New Yorkers were polled by telephone. A combination of random landline and cell phone numbers were used from September 13th to the 14th, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. The sample was balanced so that each borough reflects its proportion of the overall city population, and the results are statistically significant within 3.1 percentage points. A good number of questions were repeated this year to begin to gather and track data for trend analysis. It's too early, this being only the second year, to see trends yet, but we are establishing a very credible baseline. This survey gives us wonderful information on key indicators of livability in New York from the people who live and work here. It's our hope that it generates as many or more questions than it answers, and provides the fodder for many conversations over the next 2 days and for the coming year. New Yorkers remain satisfied with New York City as a place to live, with nearly identical results to last year. 83% of respondents said that they are satisfied or very satisfied. For satisfaction within the boroughs, Manhattanites remain the most satisfied at 91%. It was 95% last year. But Brooklyn respondents this year indicated a higher level of satisfaction at 87%, up from 79% last year, which is something for us to watch. The rest of the three boroughs are tied at 77%. Over 45-year-old respondents were slightly less satisfied overall. Respondents with incomes less than $75,000 are less satisfied. College graduates more likely to say very satisfied. Okay, let's look at it a different way. If given the opportunity to move, most New Yorkers, 57%, would either continue living in the same place or move to another part of the same neighborhood. 14% of residents would move to another area in New York City. Nearly 1/3 of residents would move out of New York City altogether. Manhattanites were most positive about staying put at 56%. More Brooklyn residents, 34%, and Bronx residents, 32%, would opt to move out of New York than residents of other boroughs. More Latinos, 36%, would opt to move out of New York than whites at 23%, or African Americans at 33%. More people earning more than $75,000 would stay put versus earning less. We asked New Yorkers if they thought the city and their neighborhoods had improved over the time they've been in New York. Most of these New Yorkers are longtime city residents. The average length of time residents have lived in New York is for more than 20 years, and most New Yorkers have lived in the same neighborhood for more than 10 years. We just heard that overall satisfaction with living in New York was high. But as with so many questions in the survey, when we got down to the neighborhood level, things got less generic and much more personal. When asked if their neighborhoods had gotten better or worse, 1/3 said better, nearly 1/2 said that their neighborhoods were the same. Brooklyn and Queens residents were more likely this year to say things had gotten better in their neighborhoods than last year. 1/2 of Bronx respondents saw no change in their neighborhoods. Nearly 1 in 4 African American respondents said their neighborhoods had gotten worse. 38% of Latino respondents said that their neighborhoods had gotten better. MAS this year has been focusing on our watch list. We call it 11 for 11. Land use and real estate development policies and practices continue to be prominent in our work. You'll hear more about our focus on the Garment District and how changes there are affecting life in the city. We hosted a charrette on the East River waterfront, and we continue to watch the larger redevelopment projects we affectionately call the yards. So it's important for us to hear from New Yorkers their views on the development activities that a city like ours deals with every day. Now let's look at questions we asked about large real estate development. Overall, New Yorkers think that large real estate development, that is, the redevelopment of many blocks in a neighborhood for retail, business, or residential purposes is a good idea. 62% of respondents said so. But when we looked at it through a different lens, that is, does it make living here better or worse, as with many other questions that were asked, when it began to get personal, the results got more nuanced. In this case, nearly 40% said such real estate development would make New York City a better place to live, but 23% said worse, and nearly 1/3 said they were unsure. When we asked if the city should invest in development that maintain the character of its neighborhoods, nearly 1/2 of respondents said yes, with nearly 2/3 of Manhattan residents supporting preservation, but less than 1/2 of the respondents from the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens supported preservation. For further nuance, when we asked if the city should invest in development that would create jobs, even if it changed the character of the neighborhood, support for this idea was high in the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens, with far less support for development in Manhattan if it meant changing the character of a neighborhood, even if jobs were created. We see that African American and Latino respondents support real estate development that creates jobs, with 56% and 65% respectively. As New Yorkers, we walk. In a typical day, 46% of all respondents walk between 15 minutes to more than 60 minutes to work or school. 24% of Brooklynites walk over an hour to work or school. 40% walk 30 minutes or more. 43% of Latinos walk 30 minutes or more. 31% of white respondents walk 30 minutes or more. As a big walker, which I think is one of the great joys of life, I just love these walking statistics. When asked if their neighborhood were good places to bike, 64% of those polled said yes. Brooklyn came in the highest here. Brooklyn-based respondents, 68%, responded positively to this statement. But this wasn't universal. Bronx-based residents had the highest percentage, 43%, of respondents who disagreed with this statement. There seems to be a high perception of neighborhood bikeability, but there's a catch. 82% of respondents don't bike. MES has a rich history of championing the unique neighborhoods that really make the city livable. In the design world, that's called fine-grain urbanism, and we are all for it. One of the challenges cities like ours face is how to ensure that amenities are fairly distributed and reflect what local neighborhoods need and want. We're keen to learn more about the particular challenges to livability that neighborhoods experience. Now let's look at questions we asked about neighborhoods. This is one of the questions repeated that saw some change from last year. Last year, 62% of New Yorkers responded that they felt it was important to have public gardens, green areas, and open spaces in their neighborhoods. This year, you see 53% felt similarly. 42% of this year's respondents felt that it was important for them to have new housing, shopping, or businesses. One might guess that people are voting for what they don't have. In any case, it's not an either-or question. People shouldn't have to choose. When we look at use of parks and open spaces, we found that overall, 57% of respondents use them a good amount or a great deal, with the largest usage in Manhattan and the least usage in the Bronx at 52% and Queens at 47%. But another way to look at this is that nearly half are not using parks much at all, and this is something we do want to continue to look at. Overall, high marks for certain neighborhood amenities, as with last year. A clear majority of New Yorkers agree that their neighborhoods are clean. They have easy access to public transportation, have good parks and green spaces, their neighborhoods are good places to raise children, and have good schools. Let's look at some of the disparities. We asked New Yorkers to rate the following for their neighborhoods. Street repair and maintenance, Queens. A majority reported fair or poor, while the same percentage in Manhattan, 57%, said good to excellent. Police protection. An overwhelming majority of Manhattanites indicated their neighborhood police protection was good to excellent, while 43% of Brooklyn residents reported fair or poor. Feel safe walking at night? Yes. 78% in the Bronx, Brooklyn 70%, Manhattan 88%, Queens 77%, Staten Island 82%. Quality of available housing. Overall, 51% of respondents rated the quality of available housing as fair or poor, with the highest levels of dissatisfaction in the Bronx at 52% and Brooklyn 55%. Quality of shopping. As with last year, there was an overall satisfaction with the quality of shopping available in their neighborhoods. Though we look at the neighborhood differences, we do see some things. We see in Manhattan, 68% good to excellent, Bronx and Queens, 40% fair to poor. Quality of grocery stores. Grocery store satisfaction, too, is divided along borough lines, with 73% of Manhattanites satisfied and Brooklyn and Bronx 36% dissatisfied. We asked a couple of questions reprised from last year about the satisfaction levels in neighborhoods with entertainment and cultural offerings. Overall, New Yorkers felt neither rated very high, with the majority rating cinemas and theaters, as well as museums and other arts opportunities in their neighborhoods, as fair or poor. Some big differences between the boroughs when we receive these results. And so much of this, as I had pointed out, is very real time. I mean, we were in the field only a month ago. The amounts of data that is collected from these kinds of survey instruments is absolutely enormous for those of you that have experience with this. And it takes quite some time to digest all the information, and frankly, we'll be digesting it for quite a long time to come. This topic that we're on right now with respect to accessibility, availability, use of cultural amenities and other amenities was a very interesting and important exploration for us at MAS, and had some surprises. 70% of Bronxites felt that cinemas and theaters were fair or poor, whereas the same percentage of Manhattanites felt they were excellent or good. When looking at cultural offerings, such as museums, we asked how New Yorkers would rate experiencing culture in their neighborhoods. Overall, only 37% rated these offerings as good or excellent, so the majority rated them fair or poor. Let's look at the boroughs. While 67% of Manhattanites felt their neighborhoods as a good or excellent place to experience the arts and culture, residents of the other boroughs did not, with only 19% in the Bronx, 35% in Brooklyn, 28% in Queens, and 33% in Staten Island, rating their offerings as good or excellent. So we've seen food deserts, and now we're looking at arts and culture deserts. I think with the advent of our partnership with the Alliance for the Arts, we at MAS are well positioned to put this squarely on MAS's agenda. Let's move over to public libraries. By contrast, overall, New Yorkers highly rate the public libraries in their neighborhoods. 64% rate them as excellent or good. Still, nearly one-third rate them as fair or poor, and another 5% are unsure. And there are big contrasts by borough and ethnicity. Nearly 7 out of 10 Manhattanites rate their libraries as good or excellent, but 4 of 10 Bronx residents rate them fair or poor. Significant percentages of African Americans, 35%, and Latinos, 37%, rate their neighborhood libraries as fair or poor, while white New Yorkers rate theirs as good or excellent. The democratization of city building is happening around the world as more of us move into cities and have a stake in and want to have a direct impact on the quality of our built form. MAS and its many partners are always seeking ways to engage communities better in the development of the city. At MAS, we provide a Livable Neighborhoods training program to equip people to participate and become informed advocates. Now let's look at questions we asked about engagement. This year, we gathered some new data on New Yorkers' personal engagement with policymaking and making change in the city. We asked a number of questions ranging from personal involvement, knowing how to get involved, and what kinds of activities they participated in to make change, from volunteering to joining a neighborhood block association. 59% said that they knew how to get involved in their neighborhoods, but a whopping 69% said they don't have the time to stay actively involved. Here's how personal involvement broke down. Been a member of an association, 23%. Participated or gave money to an issue, 45%. Attended a community board meeting, 33%. Volunteered your time, 38%. 64% of New Yorkers have done at least one of these. We asked about making an impact and whether folks thought that they could make a difference. The majority of respondents indicated yes, that they thought that they could have a moderate or big impact in making their communities a better place to live. In terms of geography, 36% of Bronx respondents answered big impact, while only 25% of Manhattan respondents answered similarly. We also asked if the respondents felt that decision makers for their neighborhoods, which include both elected and appointed officials, saw things the way they saw them, and we found a disconnect. 58% overall, and more in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island, say that decision makers see things differently than the public, or they were unsure. This next piece is a direct reprise from last year's survey, which we wanted to include. Given that MAS is releasing its Garment District report at this summit, we thought it worth taking another quick look today. These are the 2010 results to the question about perceptions when seeing the Made in New York label. New Yorkers favor the price breaks that large stores offer, but they overwhelmingly felt that a Made in New York label meant helping the local economy. This finding helped shape our work on manufacturing in New York, particularly in the Garment District. Okay, now for the Borough Bests. Everybody loves this. I mean, last year we asked the happiness question and people went like nuts. I mean, you know, Staten Island won. I want to say that again in a minute, but they did. We went about it a different way this year, but let's kind of look at these. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. I'm just going to really go through them. These results are presented in the aggregate, and there are 9 of them. So let's go through them one by one. The proudest is Brooklyn. What a surprise. Shocking. Best place to live, Manhattan. Most scenic, Manhattan. We're cheating with this view right now. Best value for the money, Queens. Most underrated, the Bronx. Best place to start a business, Manhattan. Friendliest, Manhattan. Safest, Manhattan. Most family-friendly, Queens. And again, let's not forget Staten Island. Last year, they were the happiest. This year, we asked the happiness question in a different way. Are you optimistic about the future of New York City? Where Staten Island won last year, Queens wins this year. Overall, 76% of New Yorkers are optimistic about our future. Early this morning, they were, they're always doing this, right, on all the morning news shows about, how we feel as Americans. And there were some other releases of survey results this morning, and we're feeling incredibly poorly as Americans. But unless you live in New York, because in New York, you're feeling wonderfully optimistic about the future. 76% of New Yorkers are optimistic about our future. No wonder 250 people are moving here a day. Queens residents were the most optimistic with 79%, edging out the Bronx at 78%, followed by Brooklyn and Manhattan at 77%, and then Staten Island at 68%. Now, we learned that Queens is the most family-friendly borough and offers the best value. So no wonder Queens residents are the most optimistic. Before we convene our panel reacting to these findings, I want to close by saying that we at MAS don't intend to let the use of this poll and the underlying data stay here. Our intent is to use the data in program planning and advocacy. As with last year, it's clear that citywide organizations like MAS need to step up our individual and collective efforts and presence in neighborhoods outside of Manhattan. And we need to nurture existing relationships and forge new partnerships with community-based organizations. These results reinforce what we all instinctively sense, that the amenities and features that make part of our city livable are absent from other parts. Many of you in this room deal with this day to day, but we need more of New York City's key institutions like us here at MAS to become more engaged in the challenges to livability that all parts of the city and across the metropolitan region even are facing. To that end, we convene this summit to explore new opportunities for us to work together across borough lines, race and class lines, across interests and disciplines, and we're eager for partners to work with. Later, we'll be hearing from other cities who share some of these challenges about how they're forming new, diverse partnerships. We also have an important session tomorrow about the opportunities and challenges of revitalizing the city's public housing stock from neighborhoods like the ones involved with the Brownsville Partnership. We know we have huge infrastructure challenges in anticipating climate change, connecting neighborhoods and restoring a diverse urban fabric. City building is a magnificent exercise, and we are in it for the long haul. I invite you to look at the results presented here today. They're posted on our website as of this moment at mas.org.